How stunning is a movie adapted from a blockbuster game? The fierce and powerful male fire dragon, the immensely strong triceratops, and the shadow spider that rules the night. Gamers are exclaiming that the monsters are incredibly well rendered. The casting for the hero and heroine who fight the monsters is also exceptional, and our leading actors feel they have met too late. After countless rounds of battle between the two sides, they finally agreed to fight the monsters together. The first lucky one is, of course, the shadow spider that wins by numbers. Since they can't defeat a group, they decided to go for a 2-on-1 first. As the heroine sang beautifully, a spider charged at her. Although several legs were trapped, it has a very large number of legs, then lunged wildly at the heroine. However, in the next second, the hero suddenly appeared, wielding a dragon-slaying sword. The two then grabbed the scorpion's tail and escaped. At dawn, they made arrows from the poison stingers and also found a lot of equipment on a sunken ship. Because the upcoming enemies were extremely powerful, the mechanism instantly launched barrels into the sandy sea. The enormous triceratops let out a low roar and then charged towards the two at high speed. At this moment, the hero took out his ancestral warbow. Meanwhile, the heroine took the opportunity to shoot a rope arrow onto the triceratops, then plunged her knife into its forehead. The triceratops thrashed its body in pain and quickly fell heavily to the ground. Afterward, the two faced many challenges and finally cleared all the minor monsters. They then found the ultimate big monster, the male fire dragon. The hero immediately drew his warbow and shot an arrow. After launching multiple rounds of attacks, they finally succeeded in enraging the male fire dragon. It directly threw the heroine to the ground. Then, what happens to the heroine next? Whether she lives or dies? Let's find out today. This Hollywood blockbuster has a global box office of $409 million. An expedition ship set sail in the desert. Dark clouds loomed ahead, with flashes of lightning and thunder. Their destination was the tower in the center of the storm. The crew laughed and chatted on the ship. Suddenly, the ship was violently shaken by an attack from an unknown creature. The captain rushed to the bow of the ship, struggling to steady the helm. Then, the expedition ship continued toward the center of the storm, but they seemed unaware that John had been thrown overboard at some point. The next day, two off-road vehicles drove into the desert. They were there to search for their missing teammates. Captain Tasha took out the map to check, then instructed them to head straight to the location where their teammates disappeared. Soon, they found the tire tracks left by their teammates. After following the tracks for a while, they discovered the traces had vanished. They were driving armored vehicles that weighed over 10 tons. The sudden disappearance of the tracks was indeed suspicious. At that moment, a team member shouted that a storm was coming. Everyone looked up and was instantly terrified. It was a sight they had never seen before. Frightened, they quickly tried to drive away. But the storm was too fast and soon engulfed the vehicles. Before they could figure out where they were, suddenly several bolts of lightning struck the car from the sky. The team member gripped the steering wheel tightly in fear, not daring to take a breath. However, visibility was too low, and the car spun several times in the air before crashing heavily to the ground. The vehicle was nearly totaled, but they only scraped off a bit of skin. Afterward, the group looked around in confusion. It certainly didn't look like the desert they had just been in. After all, the color of the sand was completely different. At this time, a team member informed Tasha that the GPS was broken, and even the compass had stopped working. This meant they were cut off from the outside world. Just as they were unsure of what to do next, one team member shouted for them to come over. Seeing the missing teammate's armored vehicle only remained a skeleton, and also a body that had been burned to a crisp. Tasha was extremely shocked. After all, nothing could burn a person so evenly. What was most weird was that the team member found several pieces of glass on the ground. Sand can melt and turn into glass, but this requires extremely high temperatures. Additionally, there are numerous bullet casings on the ground. It seems a fierce battle took place at this moment. Tasha asked everyone if they had seen any other teammates, but looking around, there was nothing. Someone suggested that they might have been dragged away and eaten by something. Everyone was suddenly filled with unease. No one knew what had happened here, but they absolutely could not stay here any longer. Then, they repaired the vehicle and prepared to leave. Just thinking about going home made everyone very excited. They were completely unaware of the danger that was about to occur. The car had not been driving long before it came to a stop. Looking ahead, they saw a giant animal skeleton. The group was utterly stunned. Besides the already extinct dinosaurs, they couldn't imagine any other animal that could grow this large. Just then, John, who had been observing from the shadows, shot an arrow at the skeleton to warn them to leave. He waved his hand, signaling them to hurry up and go. However, the team members completely ignored him and pulled out their guns and started shooting wildly. Seeing that they didn't care, John quickly made his escape. Tasha ordered everyone to stop attacking immediately. Suddenly, realizing that the situation was bad, they hurriedly got back in the vehicle, but something was following them from behind. Seeing this, Tasha immediately opened fire with the Gatling gun. However, it seemed to have no effect at all. Instead, it successfully angered the creature. In the next second, the monster suddenly emerged and flipped the vehicle over. Then it showed its true colors. The group was completely dumbfounded upon seeing it. How could there be a triceratops in the desert? That creature went extinct millions of years ago. As the triceratops drew closer, the group hurriedly raised their guns to shoot, but humans were not even as large as the triceratops's snot, so they quickly found themselves at a disadvantage. Fortunately, the overturned vehicle was repaired. The survivors hurriedly got back in the car, but the triceratops soon caught up with them. Seeing this, a team member immediately pulled out a rocket launcher. However, before he could fire, the car was flipped over by the triceratops. Then the triceratops impaled one of the team members. Realizing he wouldn't survive, he decided to take the triceratops down with him and pulled the pin from a grenade. The triceratops was enraged by the explosion, as such minor damage could not kill it. Then, it launched another attack on the group. Tasha led the team to hide under a nearby stone pillar. At this moment, John finally fought back, shooting a piercing arrow directly at it, but it had no effect at all. The triceratops remained unscathed. It turned and charged toward Tasha again, but they managed to hide in a cave. The triceratops bumped into the cave, but couldn't move it and left. On the other side, fearing another attack from the triceratops, they huddled in the cave, too scared to move, and only dared to speak after nightfall. The team members were all feeling down. As the captain, Tasha encouraged everyone. Suddenly, the shadow spider that rules the night emerged to hunt. The team members immediately opened fire. In pain, it threw Tasha down. The team members hurriedly began CPR on her. Unfortunately, a large number of shadow spiders flooded into the cave. The group had no choice but to retreat while shooting. At a critical moment, John provided them with more piercing arrows, but there were too many shadow spiders. No matter how much they fought, they couldn't defeat them all. In the end, several team members died. At this point, Tasha woke up from her unconsciousness, only to be taken away by the shadow spiders. Fortunately, they were just the reserve food for the shadow spiders. Tasha broke free from her restraints and woke up, but the other team members were not so lucky. Staring at the massive cave before her, Tasha cautiously searched for an exit. However, it was pitch black inside, so she had to light a flare for illumination. But then, a light appeared in the dark cave. The shadow spiders outside quickly noticed the anomaly. At this moment, Tasha was fully focused on her surroundings. Suddenly, she spotted her surviving teammate, Josh, and immediately helped the injured Josh to move, but they were blocked by a shadow spider. At this moment, Josh suddenly felt severe pain in his wound. When he ripped his shirt open, many small spiders crawled out. He let out a piercing scream, then was impaled by the shadow spider. With only Tasha left, she had no time to grieve and used the flare and gas to burn the shadow spider, making it scream. Soon, Tasha found the exit and crawled out, but before she could celebrate, she was pulled back in. Remembering she had a row of bullets in her pocket, she threw them forcefully at the shadow spider. Then, Tasha successfully escaped. At this point, I couldn't help but comment that the cave entrance was a bit too small, right? Was it specifically left as a backdoor for the protagonist? But Tasha, having escaped, couldn't care less about that, and she prepared to disinfect her wounds. She carefully took out a bullet, cut it open, and sprinkled the gunpowder on her wound. Then she picked up 2 stones, which was completely like a warrior. Afterward, Tasha climbed to a higher place and threw a stone into the desert. The sleeping triceratops immediately poked its head up. Seeing no one was around, it went back to sleep. It seemed that crossing the desert was not an option. Tasha had to walk through the valley. Ahead, she saw numerous sunken ships. She wanted to search the ships for some food. However, after searching for a long time, she found nothing. Suddenly, strange noises came from around her. She hurriedly drew her knife in defense. At this moment, John suddenly jumped out, placing the knife against Tasha's throat, but she quickly broke free from his grip. Then the two grappled with each other. For a moment, it was hard to tell who was winning, but due to Tasha's injuries, she was finally kicked unconscious by John. Afterward, John tied her up, planning to take her to a shelter. On the way, Tasha pretended to fall, quickly picking up a stone to hide it. Soon, night fell. Danger lurked all around them. However, they had arrived at their destination. Every entrance here was rigged with traps. It seemed relatively safe. Then John cooked himself a pot of moss soup, which made Tasha, who hadn't had a drop of water for days, crave it desperately. But she couldn't directly ask for it, so she could only make sarcastic remarks. At this moment, John signaled her to be quiet. It turned out a shadow spider was coming from above. Fortunately, it didn't stay long before leaving. Taking advantage of John's distraction, Tasha secretly used the stone to cut her ropes. The next day, John woke up first. Seeing that Tasha was still asleep, he went outside to survey the surroundings. But when he returned to the shelter, he found that Tasha was gone. Suddenly, Tasha rushed out from behind and knocked him down, tying him up. She deliberately drank water in front of John. Annoyed, he kicked the water over. Tasha angrily smashed John's cherished possessions. John was completely infuriated. Even with his hands bound, he got up to fight. In the scuffle, the two rolled out of the cave, but John crashed directly into the shadow spider's nest. He was about to be captured by the shadow spiders. In a critical moment, Tasha pulled him back up. After this event, the two reconciled immediately. Tasha even took out her cherished chocolate. John took it and had a bite. He had never tasted such a delicacy before, then began to devour it eagerly. John was very touched, took out his treasured liquor and offered it to her. Their relationship grew closer and closer. Then, Tasha followed John to a higher place. Due to their language barrier, they communicated using gestures. Learning that both of their destinations were to enter the storm center, they decided to act together. However, to get there, they had to cross the desert in front of them. But this was the territory of the Triceratops. Just when they didn't know what to do, John motioned for her to follow him. Then he pointed to the shadow spider's nest, indicating that they could use the shadow spider's venom to stun the Triceratops. Tasha praised him as a genius upon hearing this, but since shadow spiders feared light, they could only act at night, so they could only operate at night. As night fell, Tasha used her singing to lure out the venomous spiders. After leading them to the designated spot, John immediately triggered the trap. Fortunately, the two successfully got the venomous fangs and safely ran back to the cave. Then they sat by the campfire and chatted. Although they didn't speak the same language, they still had a lively conversation. Having company made them feel less lonely. The next morning, John extracted the venom and went to the sunken ship to find a long spear to attach the fangs to. Tasha found a rope arrow and set up traps. To ensure everything went perfectly, John taught her how to use the dragon-slaying sword without holding back and gave her special training. Everything was ready, waiting for the battle with the Triceratops. At this moment, they cut the trap rope, launching the barrel to attract the Triceratops' attention. But this would only buy them a little time. The Triceratops quickly sensed something was wrong and returned the way it came. The two had no choice but to split up. John was running just fine when suddenly his treasure fell out of his arms. John immediately turned back to retrieve it, but was knocked away by the Triceratops. Fortunately, he quickly got back up and drew his bow, aiming at the Triceratops. The venom hit the Triceratops' eyes, causing it to instantly close its eyes in pain. At this moment, Tasha, who reached the vehicle, began to spray bullets with the Gatling gun. The enraged Triceratops expelled some of the venom and ran over in this direction. Tasha remained calm and shouldered the rocket launcher. But the Triceratops was incredibly difficult to kill. It pinned her down and rubbed her against the ground. In a critical moment, John fell from above, jumping onto the Triceratops' head and stabbing it directly in the forehead. In pain, the Triceratops threw him off. Tasha quickly followed up, shooting a rope arrow to the top of the Triceratops' head and plunged the knife in for a fatal blow. Afterward, Tasha ran to John's side. Fortunately, he was still alive. Then Tasha cut off a piece of the Triceratops' hide, dragging John toward the storm center. As the sky darkened, the wild sand swirled around them. John was about to collapse. Tasha quickly covered him with a blanket and hid inside, and took out the medicine she found in the vehicle to give him an infusion. The next day, the two successfully survived. John also woke up safely. They continued their journey. On the way, they passed by an oasis. The two decided to rest there. They saw many ankylosaurs drinking from the river. Tasha knew they were herbivores, so she didn't think much and prepared to go drink water. Suddenly, The two immediately set up a barbecue on the spot. After finishing their meal, Tasha fell asleep right away. Meanwhile, John was tinkering with his treasures, but what they didn't know was that danger was closing in step by step. At this moment, the two heard strange noises coming from nearby. They immediately got up to check the situation and cautiously looked ahead. Suddenly, a huge fire erupted in the forest. Before they could figure out what was happening, a large number of ankylosaurs charged out. It seemed they were frightened. John and Tasha ran away. However, Tasha fell in panic and was about to be crushed by an ankylosaurus. At a critical moment, the captain fell from above. After successfully saving Tasha, a large number of dinosaurs charged in from behind. The captain quickly defended himself with the dragon-slaying sword, while Tasha wielded her twin knives. The two coordinated their attacks. On the other side, John ran to the edge of a cliff and stopped just in time. At this moment, an ankylosaurus charged from behind. John froze in place. Fortunately, his companion saved him. But the dinosaurs weren't so lucky. They fell into the abyss one after another. Meanwhile, Tasha and the captain were still fighting. Fortunately, most of the dinosaurs had fled. After the crisis was averted, Tasha said thank you. To her surprise, he was able to communicate with her. Tasha was extremely shocked. However, before she could ask what was going on, she was knocked unconscious by the captain's punch. Before long, Tasha woke up, but for some reason, she found herself locked in a cage. John came to check on her but said nothing and left. Tasha had to try to save herself. She picked up a nearby chair, smashed it against the lock on the ground, and quickly escaped. She cautiously explored her surroundings, unexpectedly found a kitchen knife. Just as she was about to approach, a humanoid cat suddenly charged out. Tasha froze in shock. At this moment, John walked over, signaling her to follow him. However, Tasha was curious about what the cat was doing, so she stopped to watch. After a while, she realized that the cat was a chef. Then, Tasha was brought before the captain. The captain said that John had explained the situation to him. Now he knew that Tasha was not a bad person, so there was no need to keep her locked up any longer. At this moment, Tasha asked the captain why he could speak her language. The captain said that she was not the first one to come here. Someone had come here many years ago, and they taught him this language. To go back, one must enter the tower in the center of the storm. It is a relic of an ancient civilization. It allows for travel between two different worlds at will. They also wanted to enter the tower to investigate, but they were attacked by a triceratops while crossing the desert. With no other options, they had to find somewhere to rest first. Now they needed to continue heading toward the tower. However, there was a male fire dragon guarding it. It was scarier than the triceratops, but it also had weaknesses. As long as they acted before it breathed fire, they could kill it. Saying this, the captain asked Tasha if she was willing to cooperate. She readily agreed. The next day, the group arrived at the foot of the tower fully armed. Lava flowed everywhere. The captain said that the lava powered the mechanisms inside the tower. This, in turn, controlled the storm. There was a door connecting the two worlds here, but it seemed unstable. Then, they decided to enter the tower. At this moment, someone said that the male fire dragon was coming. Everyone quickly hid to prepare for its arrival. Suddenly, before anyone could figure out what was happening, two of their companions had already been sacrificed. The male fire dragon roared. Sensing that intruders were hiding under the rocks, it prepared to breathe fire at them. At this moment, Tasha was trembling under the stone. In a critical moment, the captain charged out, wielding the dragon-slaying sword to attack it. The dragon retaliated immediately. A fierce battle was about to break out. The others rushed out to help immediately. No matter how everyone attacked, the effects were minimal. Instead, they completely angered the dragon. A burst of fire shot toward Tasha. She immediately jumped off the cliff. After all, it was better to fall than to be burned. Fortunately, Tasha jumped into the time portal and returned to her original world. The soldiers who came to rescue her happened to find her. What a coincidence. Just as Tasha thought she could finally go home, a strange phenomenon appeared again ahead. It was the male fire dragon flying out of the time portal. The helicopter crashed instantly. Fortunately, a tank battalion arrived for support from behind. They opened fire on the male fire dragon, but it was clear that it was ineffective. Instead, the dragon easily dealt with them. The male fire dragon continued to breathe fire. At this time, fighter jets also arrived to engage in battle, but the male fire dragon could fly as well. On the other side, the surviving Tasha was searching for weapons, but as soon as she came out, she was knocked down by the shockwave of an explosion. The male fire dragon breathed out a burst of fire to celebrate its victory. However, Tasha struggled to get up, shot a rope arrow, and slashed the dragon's wing with her knife. Then she landed smoothly. The male fire dragon was extremely unwilling to accept this and prepared to roast her to a crisp. At this moment, Tasha took the opportunity to throw a firebomb into its mouth. With just her own strength, Tasha killed the brutal male fire dragon. Just when Tasha thought the crisis was over, she didn't realize that the male fire dragon was not dead yet and was about to swallow her. In a critical moment, John shot a piercing arrow. After a barrage of attacks, they finally killed it. Thinking this was the grand finale, they didn't expect another storm to appear ahead. The time portal opened wide. Another flying dragon charged out.
We have to shut the sky tower down.
The film ends here. The movie is adapted from the popular game of the same name. The beginning is very fascinating, attracting the audience with sandstorms and otherworld teleportation. Moreover, the casting of the heroine is very fitting. The qualities she exhibits in the film are both determined and brave. This injects a powerful spiritual core into the film. Her adventure in the other world is akin to a passionate and growing struggle. From her initial fear and unfamiliarity when facing monsters, like every explorer stepping into the unknown, her heart was filled with anxiety and awe, until she gradually mastered techniques in battle and understood the survival rules of the monsters. This growth journey is truly inspiring. Each of her breakthroughs, and every time she rises in adversity, is like igniting the audience's passion within. It makes them feel invigorated. However, sometimes the halo effect is too strong. It gives a sense of things going awry. The film's control over the camera work is very well done. When showcasing the Triceratops' charge, it used a lot of close-ups and slow-motion shots, showing the Triceratops' sturdy body and the tremors of the earth, which allowed the audience to truly feel the power of the Triceratops. And when depicting the scenes of the fire dragon flying and breathing fire, it employed wide and panoramic shots. This showed the fire dragon soaring majestically in the vast sky and the spectacular sight of flames spreading, which created a strong visual impact. However, the pacing in the early part of the film was rather slow. It spent a lot of time showing the main character's exploration and adaptation in the other world, yet it did not provide enough plot progression and suspense. This made the audience feel bored in the early viewing stages. As for the later part, especially the climax of the battle near the end, the pacing suddenly quickened. Some key plot twists and resolutions felt rushed, like how the main characters quickly found and countered the male fire dragon's key strategies, which lacked adequate build-up and detailed descriptions. So the audience had not fully immersed themselves when the plot hurriedly advanced. This greatly weakened the film's tension and appeal. Furthermore, the monster designs were quite superficial. Most of these monsters displayed a singular attack pattern, which lacked descriptions of their habits and other aspects. This caused the monsters' images to remain superficial, making them feel thin and lacking depth. Their appearances felt inexplicable, lacking any background stories or ecological context. It seemed as if they only existed to create trouble for the protagonists and the randomly appearing tools. This simplistic and crude design approach truly fails to allow the audience to feel the charm of the monsters. If you enjoy my channel, please subscribe to my channel